Gil González de Ávila. Gil González de Ávila was a Spanish conquistador and the first European to arrive in present-day Nicaragua. González de Ávila first appears in historical records in 1508 when he received a royal commission to examine accounts and tax records of estates. He probably traveled soon afterward to Santo Domingo for his assignment and to establish himself. In 1511, from Valladolid, Spain, he was given the title of Accountant of Hispaniola, replacing Cristóbal de Cuéllar. His enhanced position enabled him to become a landowner, and he soon had an estate with over 200 Indian slaves. In 1518, González delivered a report to King Carlos which was highly critical of the colonial management of Hispaniola. He was at Ávila in Spain when he was approached by Andrés Nino. Nino was an expert pilot and resident of the Spanish Main. He had come to Spain to seek court support for an exploration of the Pacific coast. His first attempts had failed, but then he encountered González, a retainer of the Bishop of Palencia. The Bishop Juan Rodríguez de Fonseca was president of the Council of the Indies. With his help, González and Nino obtained approval for the venture from King Carlos. An expedition was planned, with González as captain, Nino as pilot, and Andrés de Cerceda as treasurer. Arrival in and conquest of Costa Rica and Nicaragua. In June 1519, King Carlos gave his consent to the expedition. González and Nino immediately departed for the Indies, and then proceeded to Acla in Panama, arriving in January 1520. González presented his royal commission to the governor of Panama, authorizing him to examine the tax records of the colony of Panama and prepare the expedition for exploration of the Pacific coast of Central America. The governor, known as Pedrarias, resented the scrutiny of his taxing authority and encroachment on territory for which he had his own plans. He blocked investigation of the taxes, and inhibited González's efforts to obtain seaworthy ships, supplies, and men for the expedition. Unable to acquire ships, González and Nino began construction of 4 brigantines on Tenerife in the Pearl Islands, in the Gulf of Panama. On January 26, 1522, the expedition left from Tenerife but was forced to land in western Panama after 4 days because of leaking ships. González disembarked with the main body of the army, and marched northwest along the coast and into southern Nicaragua. Nino, after making repairs, sailed along the coast until he reached a gulf along the Nicaraguan coast, where the army and fleet were reunited. It was agreed that Nino would leave 2 ships there and continue north along the coast with the other 2 to search for a straighter channel that would connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. While González continued by land, Nino sailed by the coast in sight of the landed party. Cerceda's records indicate they baptized hundreds of natives and obtained a substantial amount of gold and pearls. They arrived at a pleasant bay that they named San Vicente in Costa Rica. They continue north to the territories of Nicaragua, where they found the largest concentration of Native Americans. From Cerceda's account, the Nicaraguans did not put any resistance and more than 6,000 people were baptized, and more gold and pearls were obtained. González continued north and would eventually discover and take formal possession of the Bay of Corinto, and then the Gulf of Fonseca, which he named in honor of the patron, Bishop Juan Rodríguez de Fonseca. González proceeded to explore the fertile western valleys and was impressed with the Indian civilization he found there. He discovered the lakes later named Nicaragua and Managua. He and his small army gathered gold and baptized Indians along the way. Eventually, they so imposed upon the Indians that they were attacked and threatened with annihilation. Nevertheless, González managed to extricate his force and retreat to the Gulf where his ships were anchored. They boarded the ships and headed south. In June 1523, González returned to Panama with 3 leaky ships, 100 exhausted men, and considerable gold. He told of his discovery of Nicaragua and its people, cities, and wealth. He named the territory after an Indian king, Nicatl, which was rendered in Spanish as Nicarayo. Conquest of Honduras. Governor Pedrarias saw an opportunity for himself in Nicaragua, and moved to gain control of the situation. He attempted to arrest González and confiscate his treasure. However, González managed to avoid capture and escape to his base in Santo Domingo. There, he used the fortune he had acquired to outfit another expedition for a return to Nicaragua. By early 1524, González sailed again for Nicaragua, but a storm brought him to a bay on the Caribbean coast of Honduras where he had to lighten the ship by throwing a number of horses overboard. Hence the name Puerto Cabellos. He then sailed further west to the Bay of Amatic and the Rio Dulce, where he founded the town of San Gil de Buena Vista. After leaving settlers behind, he reboarded his ships and sailed eastward along the coast of Honduras, to just east of the Cabo de Honduras, where he landed and intended to push into Nicaragua. In the meantime, the settlers at San Gil de Buena Vista moved closer to the Indian town of Amatic because they found the original location too dangerous. They resettled at Nito, near Amatic. In the summer of 1524, Dávila took a strong force and began a march to the south towards the western valley of Nicaragua, where he had operated before. En route, he met a Spanish platoon near Toribia and learned that his territory had been invaded by an army sent by Governor Pedrarias from Panama. The army commander was Francisco Hernández de Córdoba. The platoon was forced to return south with a warning to vacate the area. Córdoba sent a small force under command of Hernando de Soto to deal with González. Soto was caught in a stealthy attack but managed to defend himself. Then the two called a truce and Soto thought they could come to an agreement, but González tricked him. With reinforcements, he attacked again and captured Soto's force. However, in a gesture of goodwill, and perhaps fearing the much larger army of Córdoba, he released the prisoners and returned to Puerto Cabellos, where he learned of the arrival of other Spaniards. In May 1524, Cristóbal de Cuéllar arrived in Honduras east of Puerto Cabellos with an army with orders from Hernán Cortés to establish a colony for him. Cuéllar established the colony near the town today called Triunfo de la Cruz, and then made himself governor in defiance of both Cortés and González. In 1524, Cortés decided it was necessary to send Francisco de las Casas with another force to rectify the situation. Instead, Cuéllar took control and captured both Las Casas at Triunfo and González in Enacio. Eventually, his own men betrayed Cuéllar and freed the prisoners. A summary trial was held. Cuéllar was found guilty of treason, and he was beheaded. Las Casas and González decided to join forces, and both declared their loyalty to Cortés. Both men decided to return to Mexico, and Las Casas left López de Aguirre in charge, with instructions to found a town, Trujillo, at the location of Puerto Cabellos. However, López de Aguirre found the area around Puerto Cabellos unsuitable and moved eastward along the coast, eventually settling near modern Trujillo. Meanwhile, Cortés himself had decided to journey to Honduras to ensure the establishment and security of the colony. Epilogue. When Las Casas and González arrived in Mexico, they found Salazar de la Pedrada in charge, having been placed there by Cortés. They refused to acknowledge his authority, stating the loyalty to Cortés, or if he had died, to Pedro de Alvarado. Salazar had them arrested and prosecuted for the murder of Cuéllar. He intended to execute them, but was finally forced to send them as prisoners to Spain. González's fate upon arrival in Spain is unknown. His old patron, Bishop de Fonseca, had died in 1524, and his new patron, Hernán Cortés, had his own problems which caused him to return to Spain to recover favor with the king. Gil González de Ávila died in 1543. The only clue to his vindication and return to Mexico was a son and namesake, Gil González de Ávila. Alonso de Ávila and Martin Cortés became involved in a conspiracy against the Viceroy of New Spain.